Hey, what's up guys? It's Joe from GadgetryTech.com, and today we're going to do something a little different. I have 3 computer cases we're going to unbox, not one, and they range in size and price, going from $50 all the way to $120. So we're going to start unboxing these. I'll explain the models, we'll take a look at the inside, and that should hopefully give you a good idea on how they scale and compare to each other and what you're really paying for when you start spending over $100 on a case. Okay, so the first case we're going to talk about is the Rosewell Nautilus. Now this case on sale could be about $50, the retail price is $60. As you can tell, it's a good size mid-tower. The first thing you'll notice is this giant window on the side, which is actually kind of a bit larger than what you normally get in that $50 range, at least for a decent quality case. I'm going to leave that film on for now just so we don't scratch it while we unbox it and take a look at the inside. But pretty tall. We're going to compare that to the others in a moment so they give you an idea on size. Let's pull this down. Now, even though this case isn't too expensive, it does come with 3 fans. You're going to get 220mm LED illuminated fans in the front. They're blue, and then one more fan in the back that's not illuminated, but it's also 120mm. So theoretically, with a CPU cooler, that is all the cooling that you'll need. There are vents. Let's pull this off. There we go. So there are vents up top. You can put another case fan, up there if you want to have additional cooling, or if you want to install a small liquid cooler. But that's there. So power button up top. CD tray, single CD tray, of course. It's an entry-level case. You're not going to have a ton of expansion. And on the top here, we're going to do a close-up after, but 2 USB 2.0 ports, headphone, microphone, 2 USB 3.0. Reset button, power button. So that is about it. And it looks like there's 2 LEDs right here. One's red for sure. So we'll take a look at that after. So let's flip this thing around. Alright, so the back is pretty straightforward. You have a cover for the PCI cards. Now I'm not usually a huge fan of this, but it's normal in that price range. But you take this screw off and that'll expose the panel to mount your PCI slot cards or PCI Express cards, so graphics cards, etc. Not the strongest if your cards are really heavy, but it is pretty forgiving. It basically just kind of clamps down. There are screw holes on this, which is nice, so you should still be able to secure it, but in an effort to keep the cost down, it has a little cover instead of all being built inside the case, which uses a lot more metal. Rolled edge, which is nice right here, so you won't cut yourself when you're mounting the I/O panel. Normal cutout for your power supply. These are actually really nice, and now that I'm unthreading them, one little thing, I usually build a lot of cases with NZXT, and they use these all-metal thumb screws, which if you've bought an NZXT case, you'll know that they tend to stick. These things are very, very easy to unscrew, almost effortless, and because it's kind of a soft plastic, it's not going to hurt my hand trying to get it off. So let's pop the cover off. See if it slides back or pops out. It does slide back first, so slide that back and put this down here. Now again, for the price, this is, keep in mind, $50, $60 case. It's all black inside. Some cheap cases don't actually paint the interior, so keep that in mind. Even though it's black on the outside, especially with a window, you don't want to see bare metal inside. It doesn't look that hot. You have, this is interesting, I'll have to look into this and the point behind it, but there's actually 2 slots for 5 1/4 inch drives, so your CD-ROMs, etc. That means this cover must come off. So we're going to mess with that afterwards so I don't look dumb. But there is expansion room here for additional drives. So 2 CD drives, 1 3.5 inch drive. And then of course you have 3 trays on the bottom, so you can install 2 3.5 inch hard drives, for example, and 1 SSD. There are SSD mounting holes right here, so you can you don't have to customize the bracket. It's good to go there. And there's one little trick I noticed too. Let's go through these cables, and then I'll show you something in the back. So let's undo this. And these are toolless, by the way, so if you're installing a CD drive, you don't have to put all the screws in, which is a pain. Power, reset, all that good motherboard stuff. Your audio cable for headphone, microphone jack. USB 2.0, USB 3.0. So make sure your motherboard has that header on it if you're going to utilize the front USB 3.0 ports. And inside this little bag are all the screws you need, including the standoffs for the motherboard should you need additional ones. There's a speaker in here and all the tiny screws for mounting hard drives and stuff like that. Let's put this aside. So again, I said I wanted to show you one more thing that's kind of nifty. So even though there's only 3 slots for hard drives inside on the cage, additionally, if you take this cover off, slide this back, there's another little cutout right here, which is actually kind of cool. So if you have a second SSD, you can mount it inside here. It gives you a little bit more flexibility. It's kind of like, you know, it's wasted space, so they might as well give it to you. It's interesting that the cutouts for the SATA are over here and up here, as opposed to being offset to kind of do a straight shot back out. But your motherboard is going to be right here anyway. So realistically, that's the soonest you can make the cut. I just think that, you know, obviously it'd be nice if it was a straight shot. It should still fit fine because if you look at this door, it does stick out. So with that gap, it makes it a lot easier for wire management. You don't have to jam the lid on and fight all the cables that you have stuff behind it if you like to hide all your wires. So that pretty much covers the Nautilus. We're going to go into the next case now and take a look at that. Alright, I just wanted to cover one more thing on the Nautilus as far as the unboxing goes because I didn't want to feel like I was crazy. So before we get into that, the 2 front fans are clear, which is really nice because that actually helps a lot with LED illumination. So these 2 guys have blue LEDs in them, and because they're all clear, that's going to have a really nice glow through the front rather than you know, opaque fans that aren't going to let as much light through. So something interesting. Looking at the inside, you have the 2 CD slot toolless bays and a 3.5 inch slot. So if you pop the cover off, you're like, great, I can load this up, get my, you know, SD card reader, DVD burner, and a fan controller. However, the front of the case only has a single slot. So let's pop this cover off. So that is the only one, and it's the top bay, it's not the middle one. It's obviously up top here. But the rest of it is actually solid plastic. There's no way to get to these trays. So if you are planning on utilizing these for internal things like a peripheral power supply or something like that, that's fine. But don't plan on having front access to the second 5.25 inch and the 3.5 inch drive bay underneath. They are inaccessible from the front. So most people don't even use DVD drives anymore. You can use this for a fan controller or a DVD slot, but you only have one up front, regardless of what the pictures suggest. So there's no fancy door or anything that the pictures aren't showing. It's all one piece. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, it's extremely light. It's a combination of metal and plastic. Adequate cooling, 3 fans included, which is excellent. It has a little rubber pad on the bottom for your power supply. It's a pretty good case. I mean, for 50 bucks, you really can't nitpick too much because you have to sacrifice somewhere. And I think that solid door is where they cut the costs while not producing something cheap and flimsy inside, because the build quality is actually really good inside. It's pretty stiff. So that wraps up the Nautilus. Thanks for checking this out. We're going to move on to something else.